Hello and welcome, you guys. So today I'm going to be talking about rhubarb, or rhabarbarum. It's a hard name to pronounce. It's a perennial plant. It's a perennial vegetable, widely renowned for rhubarb strawberry rhubarb pie. And you eat these little stems that are just super tart, but also sweet at the same time, and they all have different complicated flavor profiles. So, rhubarb is a perennial plant. It can easily grow in one location for upwards of 10 years, and it's exceptionally cold hardy. Rhubarb is cold hardy to about approximately negative 20 degrees Celsius, probably even colder if you have it in a well protected spot. Rhubarb is incredibly high in calcium, it's pretty high in iron, it's high in magnesium, vitamin C, a lot of vitamin C in rhubarb, and dietary fiber as well. So rhubarb is a decently slow growing plant at the beginning of the season, but in the mid months of like June and July, it really starts picking up, and then you get these absolutely ginormous leaves. Like, not ginormous like a gunnera or something like that, but much larger than chard leaves per se. You'll notice a little bit of yellowing on the bottommost leaves of your rhubarbs, and this is just simply the natural shedding process of rhubarb. And the topmost, newest, fresh leaves should be turgid and dark green, and they should have a little bit of an unfurling pattern here. Much like a titanarum, actually, I think. I don't know if you've ever seen the corpse flower, but that's kind of how this emerges. So, rhubarb is quite versatile in temperatures. It can handle dry, warm, like hot summers. I think one of the most important things that you can do when planting rhubarb is to make sure that you give it some depth. So this here is the absolute smallest pot that I would possibly plant a rhubarb in. I'll readily admit it's quite small, but this is just a single offset. And I don't eat a whole lot of rhubarb personally, but okay, I won't say that. I either go big or home. I either don't eat rhubarb for a whole year, or it's all I eat for like a week. I love rhubarb. But yeah, so you want to make sure that it's in an extremely fertile soil. You want to make sure it's incredibly well draining, or else you get this crown rot. And that's really sad because when this gets mushy and black in color, it essentially means the death of your whole plant. And especially if you're growing this as an investment plant and you want rhubarb for several years to come, that's quite sad. So you don't want that to happen. Um, what can I say about rhubarb? So this here is a little bit smaller than the mature size of a large rhubarb leaf. The leaves themselves are not edible. They have a whole host of different toxins and phytohormones that are detrimental to human health, and just don't eat the leaves, but you can eat the stalks. And I've noticed that the more cherry red stalks are always sweeter. And then the slightly underdeveloped, more unripened green chartreuse stalks are a lot more tart. So if you like that bitter and sour flavor, go for these ones. If you like that sweeter flavor, go for the more developed ones. Um, Go for fleshier stems too. I find those ones much easier if you're gonna make pies. So one common method for forcing rhubarbs, forcing is essentially just when you enhance the time it takes to be able to harvest into the season, is what I call shadowing. I know it has different names, but I can't think of it at the moment, the different names for shadowing, but that's essentially when once this plant has gone dormant, so it's herbaceous, it dies back right to the ground. You want to cover this crown region with approximately 3 inches of straw, or like um, really dry fibrous manure, just to coat it from those frost heaves. And then you're gonna want to put like a bucket, or like a box, or like some sort of a terracotta pot over top of it for the duration of the next month or so. And what this does is it simply has a phototropic reaction where the plant starts developing those sugars earlier, and then you can start to harvest your rhubarb earlier into the season. So that's just a nice way of forcing your rhubarb. And they tend to be more vigorous later on in the season as well with their leaf production when you do this forcing method. So that's just essentially ridding the plant of all possible light late into the fall and early into the winter. In a complete excuse me, sorry, I gotta sit down. In a complete 48-hour cycle. So or sorry, 24-hour cycle. So you want to make sure that not even a tiny little bit of light enters whatever's covering your rhubarb plant. So I'm using a 20-20-20 fertilizer on my rhubarb, just a liquid feed. I think it's from Miracle Grow. And I use that every 2 weeks, but quite sparingly. And that's just when I water it. Rhubarb likes uh, moderately acidic soils, so that's why you can supplement them with like tea bags or coffee grounds if you have any of those. And that just simply lowers the pH value in the soil, and rhubarb tends to really thrive in that. They're heavy nitrogen feeders, I've noticed. So if you want to supplement the top of the soil with a bit of top dressing of grass shavings, that tends to really help rhubarb, and they get these beautiful large leaves, which really just work on supplementing that sugar and depositing it into the tasty stems. So rhubarb also has a really beautiful flower. It's a compound flower. It kind of almost looks like it's pink, kind of like the rhubarb individual stalk color, but it's really compact. And I don't know if you've ever seen like a giant hogweed flower. Don't go touching giant hogweed, by the way. That's a really dangerous plant. But it's a similar flower structure. This plant will bloom in late summer. Um, you can divide this with just a little pitchfork, or you can divide it with a little. Sorry, there's a crow's nest up there, so it's kind of really loud today. You can divide it with like a trowel or a large spade. With the individual eyes, you need a single eye to form a crown. I recommend covering them in the winter for their first couple of seasons. It tends to take a couple of years for them to really build that cold hardiness. And if you grow in a really warm climate like Florida or California, you might want to pick a place by a pond or a place that's a little bit cooler, because otherwise those sugars are just not going to form for you inside the individual rhubarb uh, stalk, let's call it, stem. Yeah. So that's just my introduction to rhubarb in the rheum genus. There's several different types of rhubarbs. I believe this one's ruby red, I think, is the cultivar. And it's really good for pies, good for tarts. Once again, if you have problems with calcium deficiency, this plant is quite good for that. And yeah, so that's just how it's going. I'll update you guys later when this will be much larger. And I know some people are allergic to the leaves upon touch, so if you develop a rash, maybe don't touch the leaves, but you can still grow this beautiful plant. And do not mistake this plant with gunnera. Gunnera is like one of those huge ornamental rhubarb type plants, and that is by no means edible, not even the flower, not even the roots. Yeah, that can really screw you up. Don't eat that. And another thing to mention is this has a rhizomatous root system, so it's quite a traveling root system too. And the eyes form at the ends of rhizomes, and then much like a bearded iris, for example, the original mother rhizome will die, and then they'll form a ring around it of little plantlets. So that's why it's necessary to divide these every 5 to 6 years, or else you get these huge ass clumps, and it's like insanely hard to contain them. So that's my introduction to rhubarb, and I hope y'all enjoy rhubarb. I think it's incredibly underrated. It's fantastic in desserts. So have a good one, folks. Stay safe.